Dixon is doing this. He's the Chief Marketing Officer for Jack Link's. Obviously, he oversees all aspects of strategy and execution for the company. Before that, he had a similar role as Welch's. TD, tell us how you did it.
So before I start, Brandon must have left, right? So hearing about Land O'Lakes, I want to talk to you about a story personally that happened to me. It's a little interesting story, and hopefully some of you guys can relate. So have young kids. Son was 9 years old and had career day, right? Been to career day with our kids before? So I'm in there and with all the other moms and dads or whatever, and, we're all going to talk about our careers to the audience and whatnot. And so it was a great environment and whatnot. But as I'm listening to all these different parents' stories, so just to give you context, so one of the parents was a police officer. And was talking about, how he goes and saves lives and rescue kittens and all that kind of stuff. Another parent was like a petroleum engineer and was talking about how they're increasing. Oh, there you are, Brandon. Okay, you are here. Good. All right. Talking about how, they're working to reduce fossil fuels and really get to, wind and solar and all the clean energies, okay? And then another dad was a neurosurgeon and talked about brain surgery and talked about how he cures people from, stigmatisms and all different kinds of ailments. And then I get up and talk about beef jerky. And so listening to you, Brandon, and how you guys are changing the world, my fellow Minneapolis, and now I'm here to talk about beef jerky. Now, here's what I did, though. I will tell you something funny. What I did was I brought a friend. I brought my Sasquatch along with me, and then I was kind of like Oprah and like, you get beef jerky, you get beef jerky. And so anyway, made all the kids happy because I did that. But needless to say, thank you for helping me feel really bad about myself, Brandon. But let's talk about beef jerky. So by show of hands, how many people in here eat beef jerky regularly? Raise your hand. Wow. Oh, my goodness. Okay, that's impressive. That usually does not happen. And part of what you're going to hear about is the fact that, and this is, man, I need to find all you guys' email address and make sure we send you guys a lot of coupons. Usually when I'm giving a presentation like this, less than half of the room raises their hand. And that was really our business challenge. And so if I kind of put it in context for you, if you think about classic snacking, companies, right, or classic snacking products, fruit and produce, chips, pretzels, cookies, crackers, all those sort of things. Pretty much every one of us have that in our pantry in some way, shape, or form, right? 90+% household penetrated. Even when you think about something like nuts and seeds, which has really grown rapidly over the last several years, it's at 70 to 80% penetrated. So still, most people have it in their household. For us, beef jerky, only about half of the people have it in their household. Only about half of the people have even tried it. So if you think about it, if I drew a line right in this room, this half of the groups eat beef jerky, this half does not. I don't know what the hell's wrong with all you people, but you need to start eating some. But that was the dilemma that we had, okay? So how do we get that other 50% of the population to see us as a relevant product, as a relevant snack? Because when you actually think about the components and everything that people are looking for snack, low in sugar, low in calories, high in protein, we had all of the components, but we just weren't a relevant food to them, okay? Now, the other part of the equation was for those people that were eating it, the half of the people that are eating it, they were still only eating it once in a while when I go on a road trip, when I go camping, when I go fishing, which really was only happening, 2 or 3 times a year. So our incidence rates was really small, again, compared to these other categories where people are in it pretty much every day, maybe even twice a day. So we had low household penetration, low buy rate. But other than that, everything was perfect, okay? So what did we have to do? So our strategy was really about reframing this category, reframing it from being beef jerky to thinking about it as protein snacking. And by thinking about it as protein snacking, we would be able to expand not only the occasions, right, from the once in a while to the all the time, and thinking about this as an everyday snack, we could also reframe the audience from primarily being a male-based audience to being about everywhere. And I'll talk about some of the different target audiences that we were trying to go after and what were some of the unique things that we had to do to them to make them be relevant to what our product was all about. And so if you think about our hero consumer, right, our core consumer, we can just call him Bubba for right now. Bubba is what we call hooks and bullets, okay? Hooks, fishing, bullets, hunting, right? The classic outdoorsman. And he's very loyal to Jack Link's. He's very loyal to the category, frankly. He built this category, okay? But again, Bubba has a very specific demographic and psychographic. what was happening, what was emerging in our category was we noticed that there were all these opportunity consumers that we weren't talking to specifically, okay? And these consumers really looked at our product, or not necessarily looked at our product, but looked at what our product had to offer, and were interested in it. Again, high protein, low sugar, low calories, but we just weren't relevant to them, right? We weren't speaking to them in a language that they could understand. And so whether it was people going after the latest diet craze, right? Any ketos or paleos out here, right? How many of you guys have tried it? Yep. Those things work. So whether it was about the disciplined dieter, whether it was about the worker-outer, right? Using it for the physiological benefits of protein in terms of muscle building and muscle recovery and all those sort of things. Whether it was the outdoorsman, not necessarily Bubba who hunts and fish, but the outdoorsman who likes to go mountain biking and hiking and all those sort of things. Or even if it was just good old mom who wanted to give her son or daughter a good healthy snack in the afternoon or after school, right? All of these were opportunity consumers, but none of them were considering beef jerky. And so what we had to do was we couldn't lose Bubba, right? But how do we create an environment and create a platform that enables us to talk to these other consumers in a way that brings them into our franchise? And so again, I already talked about the overall reframing of from beef jerky to protein snacking, right? Right there, those words change what the way that the consumer interprets the product. Number two, we really started to focus on the occasions, okay? We looked at the different occasions that our product could be relevant. So whether it was in the home, and as opposed to sitting around and watching a movie and eating popcorn or eating chips, sorry Pepsi, wherever you are, it was, hey, what about considering eating beef jerky, right? It's a salty snack. Again, it's healthy. It's one of those indulgent snacks that you can consume a lot of, and you don't have to feel guilty after the fact. Looking at it in the work. How many of us have had that 2 o'clock crash at work, right? I'm sure we've all been there. And instead of going down and getting the Snickers bar or getting the chips or whatever, why not have beef jerky? It's going to give you the satiety, but again, it's not going to have that crash feeling afterwards. Talking about the gym and fitness and being able to bring in, protein into the fitness environment. And one of the things we had to do here was we actually had to think about product formats because bringing in a bag of beef jerky really wasn't practical for the gym. So we actually converted some of our products into bars. And so then you could take a bar, pop it in your gym bag, and can consume it either before or after your workout. But most importantly, we couldn't forget about our outdoor environment, right? Our outdoor environment was where we built this business. And so we still had to be relevant to Bubba, but we expanded the occasions of the outdoors, the hiking occasions, the mountain biking occasions, all of those things that still made the outdoors relevant, but were speaking to consumers that really weren't thinking about beef jerky outside of the context of hunting and fishing, okay? So our approach to media was multifaceted, and I've got my media partners right here. Way to go, Empower. Give it up to them. If you guys don't have a good media agency, here you go. I'll give you your plug right there, Tim. You can pay me later, man. But it really was multifaceted. We obviously went through the broad awareness vehicles, right? All of the notice and the engagement vehicles in terms of linear TV, online video, all the typical things. But we also got very specific and granular because, again, we wanted to talk to these different consumers at the right moment at the right time. So everything from programmatic out of home to, geofencing mobile, all of those specific tactics that enable us to get down to the granular level of conversion. We also had to think about our creative kind of in a multitude of different approaches. So we had creative around the working out, right? So we had our Working Out with Sasquatch, if any of you guys saw that. Working Out with Sasquatch, if any of you guys saw that, where we partnered with Odell Beckham and Clay Matthews. Then we evolved to our Running with Sasquatch, was again a more outdoorsy, really focusing on some of those activities that people do outdoors, but doing it in a context that was more relevant than just getting chased by Sasquatch. And then we moved to our most recent campaign, which is the original protein campaign, which I'll share a little bit about with you, which really starts to reframe it in the context of other snacks, right? It puts it in the context of the occasion as well as puts it in the context of, you should have thought about this snack versus this other one in this particular situation. And I'll go through some of those here in just a second. We also had to diversify our media. We were very heavy in TV and very heavy in digital early on. And we went to much more of a multifaceted media approach, as I just talked about, up and down the funnel, where we brought in things like gas station TV and geofencing mobile, as I said earlier. And this really enabled us to use our dollars a little bit harder. Again, like all of you, dollars are hard to come by, and we didn't have unlimited budgets, so we had to make every dollar work harder. And there was a little bit of a leap of faith, because as most of us marketers who've grown up in the world of broad-based advertising and trying to get all the awareness that you could get, How did you get more surgical, right? How do I make sure to what Tim said earlier, that one-to-one works a lot harder for me than the one-to-many? And that was one of the things that we really focused on as we went through this process. There was also a lot more creative diversification that we had to do. So again, we had really focused on Sasquatch in the woods, Sasquatch in the woods. I'm sure all of you guys have saw that. And it was great in terms of an awareness vehicle. Nobody, that we talked to wasn't aware of Jack Lynx, but it just wasn't relevant to them because we had never spoken to them in a language that they understood. And so we changed the way we put our creative together to ensure that we were actually speaking to mom, or that we were speaking to, that worker outer, or speaking to people in the language that they understood, and then showing our product and how it could be relevant to that specific occasion. And ultimately, we still had to keep our Sasquatch, right? But what we changed him from, in the butt of a joke, if you think about what he had been to what we call our motivational life coach, okay? Motivational, yep, you got it, right? And that's really what he is. And when you see the spots that I'm about ready to show you, that's where you'll see the role that he's playing, because he's very integral to us as a brand. He helps us punch above our weight. So we couldn't abandon him, even though we were expanding what his role is. So with that, I'll start with the first one, which is, again, this is all of our original protein campaign. And the context of this was really put in a juxtaposition of historical figures with today's kind of, life stages, if you will, or life occurrences. And the premise behind it was to say, hey, if, Genghis Khan could conquer, Mongolia, do you think he did it with a raspberry protein isolate shake? No, he probably did it with meat, right? And so I'll let you see some of these, and then any questions afterwards.
If meat could help them cross treacherous waters. It can definitely help you work past 7. Power through. With help from the original protein. 100% beef, Jack Lynx jerky.
Motivational, right? I'll let you see the next one in the same context.
If meat could help them create a marvel of the world by hand, it can definitely help you build a bookcase. Power through. With help from the original protein. 100% beef, Jack Lynx jerky.
So you can see in both of those, again, focusing on the occasion, still showing the product as a means of helping you get through whatever that occasion is. So you saw both the work occasion as well as the home occasion, okay? So again, trying to stay relevant, but trying to expand, or trying to stay true to what we are in terms of the tonality and the spirit of the brand, but trying to expand the relevance across these different occasions that we hadn't done before. Now I'll show you this last one, and this last one was more of kind of how I set up the Genghis Khan example, which is thinking about protein in context of all of your different protein choices. When you think about, yogurt, you think about protein bars, you think about even nuts and seeds for that matter. Why do you choose those and not choose beef jerky when in many cases it has as much, if not more, protein and less of the bad stuff?
Strawberry mango smoothie. No? Okay.
Smoothies didn't conquer cities. Meat did. Choose the original protein. Jack Lynx beef bars.
And that's an example of, again, a format change that we made to also make the product format more relevant to the occasions, because that was obviously the fitness occasion. So that's just a smattering. We did a bunch of different things across all the different media touch points. We obviously had, digital, we had social, we had a variety of different ways of bringing this campaign to life. I just wanted to use these to kind of give you the broad context. So what are the results? Overall, we'd say this has been very successful for us. On awareness, we already had pretty high awareness, but our awareness shot through the roof, and we believe the primary reason is because we were talking to people that we had never talked to before. So both our aided and our unaided awareness went up. Our household penetration went up 2 full points. And so again, back to that 50%, we're trying to get into that 70 to 80%. To see this kind of household penetration within the same year is pretty incredible. Our web traffic actually went up, particularly within our unique visitors, and we saw a lot more women and a lot more non-hooks and bullets begin to go to our site, which again is exciting. And then most importantly, we drove growth and we drove sales. Still some opportunity areas. We still are working on what's the role of occasions across all the different ones in that home, work, and fitness environment that we were just talking about. Still working on more surgical targeting vehicles. So again, I had some meetings with some of you guys earlier, and I'm very interested in how you can get more surgical and really drive causation and not just correlation. And then last but not least, as we expand our product portfolio, we're working on more product-specific messaging and how we can leverage that to be able to drive to a broader audience as well. But net, I would say it was a success. And so with that, that's my story, and I'm sticking to it. I feel better about myself now, having been able to share this with you guys, but I'll open up for any questions.
TD, that was great. Thank you very much. We have time for questions, guys.
Yeah.
Samples?
Oh, no.
Where's that Sasquatch?
Just give me your email address. I'll give you guys all a trough of beef jerky. Yes.
Hi, I'm Rachel. I'm from Simplify. I'm a huge Jack Link's fan, and this question is for all of you as well, kind of more like of a consumer than like from my professional role.
Sure.
The quality of the product matters even more, I would say, than the messaging, right? So the reason I love Jack Link's is because when I flip over the ingredients and I see what's in it, and I am one of those like health conscious people, I'm like, cool, I feel good about eating this. Sure. But there are cases where the messaging is, you guys do this great job with all these brand identities. You get it in front of the right person, but at the end of the day, if I look at that product on a shelf and I turn it around and I'm like, well, what's all this?
Absolutely.
You're not going to buy it. Or if you try it and then find out later, you're disappointed.
Right.
So I guess my question for you is how, working for the brand directly, integrated are you with like product teams to be able to take feedback like that, right? Because all of us in this room are marketers, and you guys can do a great job of getting your message in front of the right person. But if it falls flat on the product itself, then internally, how are you guys informing each other?
It's a great question. You couldn't have said it better in terms of the product has to live up to the promise, right? I'm fortunate that I actually have R&D report to me, so I actually get to control that. And we spend a lot of time ensuring that the messages that we send out there, the product is going to live up to them. I know that's not the case in a lot of companies, and they do run into that dichotomy of you say all this great stuff, and then the consumer picks it up and is like, well, wait a minute, you basically just lied to me, and then you lost them forever. We've been fortunate not to have that situation, but it's absolutely true.
Could you speak a little bit more to the alienation piece of
Sure.
in terms of the messaging decisions that you made?
Right.
What messaging were you trying to emphasize in order not to alienate that original core constituency?
Yeah, it's a great question, and I think that's where the framework was really to focus on the occasion versus focus on the audience, which is a little bit different than some of the things that we talked about before. So audience is obviously important in terms of the targeting and where you're going to reach them. But what we wanted to focus the message around was the occasion, because the occasion was relevant to everybody, right? When we talked about, hey, everybody sat in front of the TV watching a movie. So let's talk about that occasion, and then all the audiences can be, it's relevant to. Everybody goes to the gym and works out. So when we talk about that occasion, it can expand a bunch of different audiences. Now, what we might do is we might change who the actual creative talent was in whatever form of communication based upon who we were focusing that target. So if we were focusing it toward women, we would probably have more women in the creative. If we were focusing on, worker outer buffs, if you will, we'd have that in terms of the talent. So those are some of the nuances that we did, but we really focused on the occasion, and that enabled us to still maintain Bubba, who's very loyal to us. Bubba eats a lot of beef jerky. Trust me, we could not lose him.
But that also means you need to avoid certain types of messaging that make the product seem a little too nature and health conscious.
You got it.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Right. So the paleo theme, the Sasquatch and the paleo theme really works well in that regard. Yeah.
That's right. Yeah.
Hi, it's Michael from Campbell's.
Hey,
when I think of Jack Link's, I think working with snacking brands myself, when I think of like more immediate consumption, right? And you think of like
impulse
gas stations, impulse buys, like convenience stores, etc. Is that by choice, Or is that something that you're aiming to do, or is there a push to get people the more of the planning phase and putting in the shopping carts?
Yeah,
Things
absolutely.
Like
Yeah, I think so. Kind of back to the history of the category. Category has been very impulsive around specific occasions. So part of the reason it's gas station food is I'm going on a road trip. I don't want Billy and Susie to be yelling in the back of the car, so let me get them something that enables them to be sustained over this long road trip. Or I'm going on my fishing trip, let me stop by the gas station and pick it up. So in essence, the root of how the category was born is what made it impulsive. We're trying to change that to it becoming more everyday and trying to get people to think about it as an everyday snack. And that's one of the reasons why we're framing it up against other snacks. You know, one of the things I tell my team all the time is we need to look up and not down. So we don't really look at other beef jerky companies as our competitor because they're doing the same job that we're doing. We are looking at the Doritos of the world, the Go Fish of the world, as those are everyday snacks. We want to be considered in that same context. Great question. Yeah.
Hey, Hayden. Oh, hey, Hayden Spencer. I'm with Rick at Binkeezer.
I was sitting with you.
For everyone
you
else.
get it for everybody.
For
Okay,
everyone
I got it.
So, out of curiosity, I see that your household penetration went up 2 points for your brand.
Yeah.
Personally, I have my snack drawer at my office, and I have the individual bags of beef jerky. Unfortunately, it's not Jack Link's. I go to Costco, and I'm a huge value shopper.
Sure.
Beef jerky's not cheap.
Yeah, for sure.
So, I'm just curious, you guys went up 2 points. What did your campaign do
For the
rest of
category?
the category?
Yeah, that's a great question. And that's really and truly, that's exactly the category. Category was 2.1 because, you know, we're 50% of the category, so pretty much we're going to be the ones to drive the household penetration. But you're right, there are a lot of people are getting in the category because the category is hot, protein is hot, and so a lot of people are getting in. We look at our job as driving the category up, and we know we're going to disproportionately benefit from it. So we recognize that, you know, we have the highest share of voice, we're putting the most money into driving this household penetration, and others are going to benefit from it as well. But if we, you know, rise the category tide, if you will, we'll benefit disproportionately.
To be honest, too, outside Slim Jim, I don't know anything else besides
I know we have your media team here anyway who could speak to this, but
Sure.
just generally, top line, what were the major changes to the media plan in order to target these
Yeah, I think the primary one was we had a lot, probably 80-20 in sort of, you know, linear TV and 20% in digital, and we went more to about a 50-50, close to 55-45, something like that. So we're transitioning away from linear TV and being as our primary media vehicle. And again, it's so that we can be more surgical to all the different audiences that we're trying to talk to.
We have another one?
Michael, again, one more question. No, so I saw the shift in the consumer targets that you had. How did you get to those? Like, where did that information come from?
Yeah, so this is back to kind of thinking about attitudes and behaviors of consumers in general, looking at the snacking landscape. So we did an overall kind of snacking ANU, not a beef jerky ANU, a snacking ANU, to really understand. And what we were not surprised, I shouldn't say surprised, but what we were kind of, you know, reinforced our hypothesis was that protein was like either one or two on most people's list in terms of what they're looking for out of a snack. And then we compared that and we like, well, wait a minute, we're protein. Like, you can't out-protein meat. So, like, why is beef jerky not high on their snacking list? And so that was kind of the convergence that we did. Was like, well, protein is high. It's what everybody's seeking. But yet beef jerky wasn't even in the top 10. So that was the scary part. We're like, man, we're not even in people's top 10 in terms of snacking. Like, people even had milk ahead of beef jerky. And I'm like, that's not my check. I don't think milk got any protein. So that's one of the things we said, all right, we've got to figure out how we influence these people to really think about protein and think about meat protein as a snack. So. Cool. Any other questions? Well, thank you again for your time.
TD, thank you very much.
Thank
That
you.
was great. So let me ask, where's Dan? Let's bring Dan up. Yes. So we need a microphone for Dan. Oh, yeah? Great. Okay. You got it. Here you go. So we've heard from a number of really old brands this morning, some that even were measuring themselves in decades, even century. And I think it's a good place to wrap this morning with talking about something that's been referred to throughout the morning, which is the direct-to-consumer channel, and especially emerging direct-to-consumer brands and the ways in which they're disrupting traditional channels, in addition to all the other digital disruptions that are going on. Dan Rosen is with Hubble. He's the marketing and creative director at Hubble Contacts. How many of you have ever heard of Hubble Contacts? Okay. So you're getting there.
Some market penetration.
You're one of the original employees.
I am. Yeah, I was pre-launch even. Yeah.
When did Hubble start? How old are you?
We went live in November 2016. Right. And I've been there since like July 2016. So almost three years. I've been live for 2.5 years, and we're now in 30 countries, which is great. I think we're almost at 1 million unique like trials, and yeah, continuing to grow. Hopefully.
How do you measure? How are you measuring in terms of overall penetration in the market? Do you have a sense of, are you registering on the market share?
Yeah, we definitely are, and we know that because the larger brand, we hear from people who used to work at the larger brands that they're theoretically talking about us or wondering about us. Although obviously we're far more worried about them than they should be about us. But yeah, I don't know if I could say exactly what percentage, but yes, we've definitely kind of gotten to a significant market penetration, especially in the dailies, which were a dailies only lens.
So I want to get to the basic marketing challenge that contacts would have as a category to go direct. There's a long, traditional, well-trusted chain, both supply chain, but also a consumer journey chain of where people find out about contacts, who they work with to find the right contact for them, and you're disrupting that whole thing. Why don't you tell us about the key marketing challenge that you face trying to come into a chain that has such levels of trust all along the way?
Sure, yeah. So kind of traditionally, most people see their optometrist and they buy their lenses from the optometrist, whatever the optometrist recommends. That sort of changed a little bit with 1-800-CONTACTS, which name has not aged well, but that used to be able to order, and then they became one of the main online retailers in which you could just order directly online. It would come to you it was more convenient, and we sort of came in. But 1-800-CONTACTS didn't sell their own brand. Obviously, they sold AccuView, they sold Bausch and Lomb, those sorts of things. And so we were the first DTC kind of contact lens brand, which and I think what allowed us to kind of pop initially was that. All the other brands don't advertise online. They do kind of traditional television advertising, but because of their relationships with the doctors, that's where most of the sales were made. And I'm sure, like many large CPG companies who have relationships with the Walmarts or the Targets, selling your own brand on your site. So if like AccuView wanted to sell on its own website, it would face the ire of the entire optometrist community, which because they make percentage on each sale.
Right, but you're coming into a category where all these other brands have the imprimatur of the optometrist, and you don't.
Correct. Obviously, you still need to see an optometrist. You still need a prescription.
But how do you solve for that? How did you guys come about disrupting and getting that direct connection to consumers with that hurdle?
So obviously, we initially paired up with hundreds of doctors at the beginning, and now much more to kind of get that base. And we found that there was just like a very active, and hungry, I guess, contact lens consumer that felt like they were did not have their needs met, or they were not really educated about kind of the benefits of daily lenses, which is what we are. A lot of people wouldn't wear dailies because they were far too expensive, so they would wear monthlies. Often they would overwear. They would cause infections. And every optometrist basically says, we want to put you in dailies, but price was the biggest hurdle. We sort of found that good sweet spot where we could be price competitive with daily lenses to make it worth kind of the switch or to get to Hubble.
So then what became the key marketing challenge?
Challenge
the marketing challenge, or what set of tactics did you have to use to make this work?
I guess just very, very active kind of online advertising and using Facebook. It kind of happened pretty naturally and immediately, I think, when we started launching, because obviously as a new start we didn't have that much capital, so by necessity, but also I think by good luck, we found Facebook and Instagram and these social channels where our demo was, it's like women 25 to 35, and that kind of correlates highly with people who shop on digital ads.
So then how were you coming at this problem differently using those channels? I mean, you were creating a different mode of marketing to this audience, and you were using a different set of internal mechanisms to do this.
I guess so, yes. I think we were just, we didn't have to kind of be aspirational. As if you look at what, AccuView ads are or other ads, they're kind of very like people in a bathroom feeling very fresh or generally like that. It allowed us to be far more direct about our offer because just the funnel was way simpler and the flow was direct.
Well, tell us about those key marketing moves that you made that resonated. What were the things that broke through in these channels that resonated with consumers that they really wanted? Because you were doing a lot of, you're doing and you continue to do test and learn. That's the mantra, I would imagine, of most direct-to-consumer brands. And the ways in which they're really mastering the digital channels is that they are not afraid to adapt and to test wildly. So tell us a little bit about that process and some of the things that you're testing.
Sure, yeah. So I think we kind of came into it not really sure what our key value props would be. Would it be convenience of getting it delivered directly to you in a monthly subscription? Would it be price, that we're more affordable? Would it be that the first 2 weeks are free? Or would it be that kind of we're have a millennial brand, that's maybe something that's exciting, or people want to kind of beautify their bathroom? So we were kind of agnostic as to what that was. And because of that, I think that allowed us to kind of be open to using social advertising as a testing ground, to constantly be testing new ideas, new creatives, new value props, and following where kind of the data directed and adapting kind of our brand and our core to what people were responding to. We didn't have the luxury of being able to do like huge surveys, and so we sort of used the constant customer feedback as a data collection tool.
So this is a really important distinction, this bottom-up approach that you're taking. Even though everyone here, including all of the legacy brands, have talked about taking that more consumer-focused approach, there's a difference between getting a sense of who your consumer is and then creating a big brand message around that, and what you're doing, which is really using the data and responses and testing broadly a lot of different offers in a lot of different ways, and using the ubiquity of those social channels and the amount of feedback to really get us to let the consumer really drive where your brand is going.
Yeah.
So, I mean, what are give us some examples of the ways that worked? Because you said you went and you saw sort of 3 possible parameters, right, that you could use, that 3 value props that you weren't sure how they really worked. Tell us how that actually shook out.
Yeah, so that can be you can have just the exact same ads, creative or image or video with different copy that tests different things. You can direct them to different landing pages. We did quite a bit of landing pages, and basically every week I think we have at least 2 or 3 different tests going. Is it better to say first 2 weeks free plus $1 shipping and handling, or is it better to say get 2 weeks for $1? Because now that we have a bunch of markets, we can test. Right now we're testing in Canada whether your first subscription box is a quarterly box or is it a monthly box. All those sorts of things. Should we have a super high first trial. In Europe, we tried having, instead of a €1, we tried having an €8, and then you're able to say, okay, that's going to drive up our CPAs, but that will also help our LTV. And so constantly being able to test and find that balance has allowed us to, I think, grow quite quickly and double down with confidence on ideas, so that when we eventually went into TV about a year in, we were fully confident that the value propositions were sound, and that's what people were responding to, as opposed to kind of just trying to guess or project onto our consumers what we thought they would want.
Well, does that process you just described, does that mean that ultimately you did settle on an overall value proposition that worked for most consumers and that you settled on a final answer? Or does that mean that you ended up with a lot of different answers that you have to service to different audiences?
We basically saw that price was kind of the biggest driver, and giving that ability to test for 2 weeks has by far been the most success. So we've sort of doubled down on that in almost a grotesque, simplified way, at least on the just creative front. But yeah, most of our ads say get 30 contacts for $1, and we find that just that opportunity to try a new product, especially contact lenses, has been really great. But it's also it's not just in the messaging, also in the creative strategy. At first we were kind of mimicking a lot of the larger brands in terms of kind of that more beauty, healthcare, freshness, more almost stock photography, and the more we kind of tested, we saw, the more literal we got, the more our customers kind of responded directly. And certain ads that we thought, this might be gross or this might be turn off, contact lens wearers are like very familiar with putting things in their eyes and almost relate to that. And that also offered a unique opportunity to differentiate ourselves from the larger brands and being kind of very direct at showing what you got and relating to what contact lens wearers deal with every day.
Do we want to stop and take a look at some of the creative?
Sure, yeah.
Some of the examples.
So these are just kind of two examples of still ads that we've been running. So this ad on the right, we just took this image and we probably tried about 50 different patterns. So during Christmas time, it's like holly. In the summer, it's it's like more tropics. On the right side, that image I took I think literally 2.5 years ago, and it's still been one of I'm like a one-hit wonder with that the Ice Baby of Hubble. So these are like pretty simple and direct, but I think. I think it
communicates value.
Yeah, it communicates value. I don't think we're like sacrificing brand. I think you see our kind of nice boxes, and that in and of itself feels very different from the more medical kind of AccuView. So this is kind of our maybe phase 2, and then we're like, okay, let's start because we test 5 to 10 new creatives a week. That gives us a lot of opportunity to try new things, like this one, which is our CEO's dog who's just in the office, and it's like, okay, let's see if I take a photo with my iPhone and this one, and this was one of our best performers for like 3 months, which is great. And I think just being open to that like we don't know what people are going to relate to, and we're competing with with food and baby photos, everything on your Instagram feed. This kind of freed us up, actually, in a way, to stand out by fitting in.
Were you finding different? Were you finding different? You mentioned that there are different KPIs that you're looking at, including retention as opposed to acquisition. How are some of these behaving differently? Are you finding that your strategy is evolving? Are you moving towards more of a retention strategy, and is that changing the decisions you're making here? And the measurements that you're taking.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely, a balance that we have between cost per acquisition and LTV. The more maybe you lean into this sort of value, kind of 30 contacts for $1, the more maybe you sacrifice retention because it could lead to some people who are just interested in the free offer. But I think, after kind of testing all these messages and just tracking where people end up, we kind of found the right balance of, okay, maybe we'll get some scammers, but it ends up being kind of worth it in the end with our.
How about,
with our
are
LTV.
you having to pivot more towards or think about a longer term retention strategy? And does that change? Are you aiming different creative towards retention? Because you're using social media, you're able to retarget your own customers if you want. You're able to keep the brand in mind for them. Are you changing your strategy and as you're thinking longer term about customer retention?
So the biggest thing that we've done in terms of customer retention is actually start a sister company. And this is just inherently some of the limits of small DTC company. We don't have huge money to invest in R&D like some of the big CPG brands here. And we saw that we looked at one of the main reasons for cancellation is just there's a whole suite of lens types that we just don't offer, whether that's for astigmatism or multifocal or color lenses that are extremely expensive to produce. And so maybe years down the line we'll be able to kind of purchase our own factory or create our own lenses, but we kind of saw that there was a lot of losses there. So we started a site called Context Cart, which actually sells all the other brands of lenses. I
want to underscore this.
Yeah.
You created a company that sells your competitors.
Correct. Because we saw that we were losing so many customers just because we weren't able to satisfy their needs, and so as opposed to just completely losing them, we already had them, right? We have all these canceled customers, or we have people who have signed up for Torics waiting lists. We know which audiences are successful on Facebook and Instagram, and kind of all the lookalikes that create of that, all the creative styles that work. So it's this huge segment of the contact lens market that we just weren't able to meet, and so instead of saying, okay, well, we'll save this for like when we get purchased by a big CPG company, we're like, and they can throw money at this. We said, well, let's just satisfy these customers now, and then also we now gain access to huge amounts of data as to what people are interested in, what types of lenses, so that when we do actually move forward, we know, should we move forward with toric lenses? Should we move forward with color lenses? That sort of thing.
Well, and again, I want to underscore another piece of this that just when we were on our call, it just blew me away. You're not only are selling your competitors, but you've also demonstrated that you know how to sell your competitors better than they do. You have data. You have data about behaviors of contact buyers, especially those who will buy online, that in many ways they don't have. So you could arguably you're able to sell their product better than they are.
Correct, and I think, and moreover, they're not able to because of their kind of relationships with their supply chain and their retail. So they're kind of handicapped. So right now, if you see like an AccuView ad on Facebook, it'll just take you to a landing page with some info about AccuView, which is like, okay, that's very nice. How are you measuring, ROI on that ad? And it's pure brand awareness, which is important, but that's not going to compare to an ad that's, optimized for conversion to AccuView, and that allows people to buy it directly.
Now, there's another thing that you guys are doing that really fascinated me, and that's the ways in which you introduce or test new product ideas. Now, one of the things that almost all of the direct-to-consumer brands are starting to do, at least the older ones, are starting to realize they need to expand their product portfolio. They want to own brand categories, so they start moving into aligned product. You decided you wanted to try eye drops. Tell me how you did that, because I think this is great. This is great.
So yeah, this was probably a year in. We were thinking about, okay, should we test eye drops? Would that be an add-on that consumers were interested in? But the cost of designing and manufacturing and ordering and fulfilling eye drops was very expensive for a test. So what we did was we added it to our website, and I created like a mock kind of eye drop brand, and we launched ads to see what demand would be, and then we refunded the people who bought it, and we were able to see whether this would be worth it. So we never had the product, but I mean, I think that's kind of symptomatic of how we're using Facebook and Instagram generally as just a testing ground for everything, because we assume that we're idiots and we don't know anything, but that people will tell us kind of what they want, what they're interested in. Part of the reason we did Context Cart was because we got so much feedback on ads in comments that people wanted toric lenses, and that was one of the main reasons they weren't buying or that they were canceling. And so really having access directly to consumers has really been invaluable for us.
Did you get any pushback on that you launched that you advertised a product that didn't
think
exist?
We sent a very nice email apologizing, and I think we didn't take anyone's money. I mean, this is if you think about what Google does all the time, where when you're typing in the CAPTCHA or we have to select whether this is a car or not, right? That's them training their automated car algorithm. We're all being used to some capacity, but also the purpose is to better our service and our product in the end.
That's an interesting. Consumer brands represents as in work, but also how you do that at scale as you're growing into a much.
Yeah, I'm the only full-time marketing and creative person at Hubble, which I think is pretty rare. But that kind of synergy and synthesis of our marketing and our creative allows us to move quite quickly and to be able to make decisions very fast. What we've done is we've sort of leveraged, if our tech team is swamped, we outsource to a tech team or to kind of a creative agency, and we kind of go as needed and work with them kind of
so keeping
ad hoc.
Keeping that core small.
Yeah.
But then keeping as you grow, let the growth push the growth out to the outsourcing in terms of scale.
Yep.
But
exactly.
keep that basic decision-making structure very small.
Exactly.
Internally, and then using whatever tools are available to do the scaling.
Yeah, and that kind of prevents, as I'm sure many people experience, the kind of like bureaucracy that can be great in some ways in terms of getting a lot of things off the ground, but can also be limiting in terms of decision making. And given how much we're testing, it's necessary almost to not second guess, because worst comes to worst, a couple of people have seen an ad that doesn't work, and that sort of maybe we're like commitment phobic, but that sort of process has allowed us to maintain what I think was successful at the beginning.
And in the case of contact carts, you actually have outsourced a lot of that, right?
Correct. That new website was built entirely by an out-of-house tech team, but that also kind of means that when we need things fixed or changed, we're able to work with them directly, and our core tech team is able to continue on Hubble, which is still obviously a majority of our business.
So one of the reasons why a lot of the 100-year-old brands here in the room don't do some of the stuff that you do, and some of the audacious stuff that you guys do, is because they're very wary of brand reputation. They're hypersensitive of it. You guys have had some public criticism too. What's your attitude towards how you take the PR hits, how you respond to them?
I think, we have had PR hits, but it also comes from the very people that we're trying to unseat. So it's not completely surprising. It's like asking taxi drivers what they think about Uber. I think we obviously listen, and the reason any sort of criticism has not been that hard is because we're already so in dialogue with what our consumers' issues are, and what their problems are, and trying to meet those needs. That we're almost ahead of it. So,
is there a brand affinity here? Do people really care about Hubble? I mean, just because that's one of the things that's sort of coursing through the next 3 days is attachment to brand, whether brands really resonate and have meaning with consumers. Does Hubble have that kind of connection with its consumers?
Yeah, I think we definitely do, and this even surprised me as, and I'm the creative director, but I've talked to people, I've run into people who wear Hubble, and they're, we have 5 different colors that come, and they tell me they get sad when they don't get the color combination that they want. And I think before Hubble, most people didn't even know what brand of contacts they were wearing. There was zero brand loyalty. It was just like whatever kind of the optometrist packaged you. There was no kind of question about why I should be paying this. What's the difference? Should I be in monthly? Should I be in dailies? And I think we kind of changed the paradigm a bit, where people were like, oh, what even product am I wearing? Why am I paying this much? Why does it look completely sterile and medical? Maybe I can get something that's, maybe it's superficial, but it's more fun. It's kind of more shareable. I think that's very important. We get probably like 20 different UGC user-generated content a day. People just posting videos of their contacts being delivered or opening or unboxing, and that's not something you see with any other brand. No one's sharing their like AccuView because there's nothing really exciting about it. But that's also not their play. So I think we're trying to have some brand moments that can excite people.
Is taking on the man actually part of the brand image? The fact that you're taking on an industry that sort of people feel they've been overpaid, they've been sort of shackled into a particular supply chain, a particular kind of pricing?
Yeah, I think so, and kind of spreading awareness of like why people are paying so much. I mean, if you go to Europe, none of the kind of regulations and costs are there that we have in the United States, because it was just the contact lens industry wrote a law. Partially that's good for us because it's our competitive advantage. But I think also, similar to Harry's and Dollar Shave and Warby Parker, there's this kind of complacency that most people did not ever consider why they pay what they pay, and what that consolidation of power in a few large kind of brands has done.
I want to leave some time for questions for Dan. Anybody have any questions for Dan? Yep.
Hi, Dean Jackson, Life Extension. It was interesting to hear about how you're selling to your competitors based on kind of the existing data that you already had from those customers, shifting over to the competitors, and then newfound information and data that you receive. Do you have a back-end strategy to bring them back to boost your margins?
Bring it back to Hubble?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think, eventually we'll be able to tell what's our biggest weaknesses, what are our gaps. It's usually product. If you look at the reason most people are canceling, it's because we're not able to give them the kind of lens types they need, or specifically our lenses don't work for them, which is, everyone's eyes are different, and it's random whether some people think we're the best lenses they've ever had and some people say we're the worst. It's sort of random. And for that reason, there's not much we can do there, honestly, in terms of being able to fix that, just because that's the type of lens we have. But we are able to not lose them. And when we go into different lens of products in the future, we'll now know exactly where to invest and how. And I think that's really the value data there.
Makes it really valuable to whoever buys you, too.
Yes, and if anyone here
if anybody buys you, they've got a lot of data.
Hi, Ali Baker with Verizon. Just a quick question. So what do you guys do to maintain the product quality? Like, lens is something you put in your eye, and a lot of customers probably say, hey, I'm with AccuView, but I really, that's important to me because it's it's in my eye. So how do you kind of overcome that, I would say, barrier to entry?
Yeah, that's probably one of the biggest challenges, just because there are so few actual manufacturers of contact lenses at scale. So we partnered with St. John, which is, I think, like the 5th biggest in the world, and they're FDA approved, and they have to go through constant testing. That's kind of the because of that, and because we're not a large CPG company, we don't have kind of billions of dollars to buy a factory. That's sort of one of the areas where we are limited, at least for now, in terms of kind of really making our lens just even like 10% better. We're temporarily stuck, which I think is, again, one of the reasons why we're looking at other avenues to satisfy the customers for whom our lens is not right.
Hi, my name is Uli Haslacher with Pomor Skincare, and I was just wondering how much you are affected by single-use plastic, and if your consumer worries about that, hearing it's a female 25 to 35. Is there different states like California or Washington where you have less consumers because they are worried about single-use plastic and it affects brands? So I just recently changed to dailies, and I cannot believe the amount of plastic. So I'm actually changing back. So that's my force to go back. Are you affecting by single-use plastic concerns?
Yeah, that's certainly kind of a comment that we'll get. It's not a huge, I would say, percentage of comments on our social, but it's definitely a concern. All our materials are recyclable. I think one of the main things that people don't realize is that with monthly lenses or biweekly, you then have to buy contact solution and contact cases, which actually ends up being very similar in terms of the plastic waste. And I think taking that into account, and that dailies are by far less likely to lead to infections and eye issues, I think that's sort of a compromise that our consumers are willing to make.
Dan's going to lead the roundtable on DDCs. That starts in about 15 seconds. Dan, this was fascinating. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
We're gonna move to roundtables now. Where we have signs. You're gonna have to tell me where they are. The new CPG media plan. Tim Glover is going to be leading that one.